Record.
Okay, got it. Okay. Oh, and a big shout out to my mom if she's here, because she's going to feature in this. She's 92 years old, and she survived the Blitz, which we're going to be talking about, the Blitz in Coventry in the Second World War. And thank you all of you that have come tonight, and welcome to Clio's Circle. It's a circle of historians united by Jung's concept of the archetypal feminine. And unlike traditional historians, these brave scholars dare to embrace the unconscious forces at work in their study of the past. They willingly embrace dreams, visions, and trance states as part of their work. So my talk will fall into three parts. The first part, which I was very much encouraged at Pacifica, I will say, to talk about, the personal. I'm going to talk about my personal call to the work, growing up in Coventry, England, and a world that was steeped in the past. And secondly, I'm going to talk a little bit about what traditional history at Oxford was like, where I studied, where the big dominance was on the masculine side of history, as we'll be seeing, and not on the feminine. And third, I'm going to talk about my call to Pacifica in America to study depth psychology, where, in contrast to Oxford, I had feminine professors for the first time. And I was encouraged to embrace the archetypal feminine in the research material that I was compiling for what eventually became this book, Clio's Circle, Entering the Imaginal World of Historians. So join me together as we journey into the past, where we can recreate historical events using our senses to see, hear, touch, and even smell bygone days. So my call comes early. Born in Coventry, England, amidst the ruins of Nazi bombing during the Second World War, I'm a Blitz baby. Coventry is famous for the destruction of its medieval cathedral in the air raids of 1940. And it was here in the ruins that I played with my brother whilst my parents attended Sunday services. So what you're seeing there is the ruins of Coventry Cathedral where I played. And this is really, as far as I know, a unique place because they decided to keep the ruins up as a reminder of the past and then rebuild the cathedral just on the other side. So the new cathedral is standing there right next to the old one. So the cathedral, this is the ruined one, stands as a shell of its former self. There are four walls, the colour of the dark clay soil on Coventry, on which it's built. There are arched windows with no glass, an altar with no cloth, and a nave with no pews. Stumps of pillars resemble sad remnants of a former forest, and two giant charred nails from the original roof are slung together to make a cross. Behind the cross of nails are the words "Father forgive," carved in classic gold font, a moving reminder of the cathedral's past, together with hope for the future. Ruins are the playground for the imagination. Children love them for their endless possibilities. For games, for hide and seek, for climbing and jumping. But beyond this, there is the desire to reconstruct, reimagine, and relive the lives of inhabitants, piecing together their buildings, imagining their reconstruction, and the lives of those who used to live there. I played in the ruins even when there was snow. I run one wet mittened hand across the altar table, enjoying the crunch of the ice as I shape a snowball. My hand is damp and soggy. The wool on my mitten sags from the weight of the ice. I raise my arm, take aim, but too fast, my brother hides behind one of the column stumps, and the ice shatters on the sturdy stone. My parents take me to ruined castles. Again, I love to play. Being a Norman soldier, firing through the narrow arrow slits. Being the prison warden, holding my poor brother captive in the dungeon. Being the queen who receives her courtiers in the Great Hall. History is alive for me. It's in the air that I breathe, the stories I read, and the games that I play. On rainy days, I open my mum's wartime suitcase. This is a tiny child suitcase that she carried in the 1940s, all of 10 miles to Leamington when the Blitz came. And it's full of treasures. I run my fingers along the soft brown fur of giant gloves stored in there, made from a coat during the make do and mend era. Then I try one on. It's too big by about 8 sizes, but I love the way the soft leather flaps against my palm. I go through this ritual many times a year. First the gloves, and then the fox furs. I wrap them around my neck, inhaling their heavy, intoxicating, musty scent. My face warms as I bury my nose deeper into the fur. I love it, but the two heads at either end, with their hard snouts and beady glass eyes, do scare me. They bang against my neck as I parade myself around the bedroom, imagining I'm an aristocratic lady. Next comes the child's gas mask. I like to scare myself with this. It's dusted with white talcum powder to preserve the black rubber, but the rubber smell dominates. Sometimes the mask is hard to get on and it gets caught in my hair, yanking strands and causing my eyes to water, but I persist anyway. I want to feel what my mom felt. I want to see through the plastic eye circles and breathe through the holes over my nose. The whole feeling is simultaneously claustrophobic and exciting. I don't like to look at the outside of the mask too much, as it reminds me of a blown-up picture of a fly with giant goggles. And finally, there is the white silk handkerchief made from a parachute. It's another of those make, do, and mend items. The family legend is that an Air Force cadet fell into a tree in the woods and left the torn remnants of the parachute behind. And my grandmother sewed perfect square handkerchiefs out of the remnants of fine silk. I like to balance this on my fingers and peek through, enjoying the light brushing of the fabric. I can see my fingertips and I wiggle them by the light of the window as the rain taps against the glass. My house is full of history. The white wooden window frames are slanted from the blast of a giant bomb in a nearby park. Everything is slightly off. The glass on the front door is cracked and the frame on the back door doesn't quite fit. Under the stairs is a tiny dark room like Harry Potter's cupboard at the Dursleys, where there's just enough room for a child and a camp bed and for an adult to crouch. The electric meter emits a whirring sound when I hide in there, listening for my brother's footsteps in games of hide and seek. During the air raids, my mom slept there with my granny squatting next to her. Close to the meters is a pencil spider hanging from a single thread drawn by my mom on the crumbling wall. I'm scared of spiders. It's in the garden, however, when history really comes to life. I decide I'm an archaeologist and I start digging in the heavy clay soil. It's hard but rewarding work. I uncover a small white china rabbit's ear, a 1939 threepenny piece, an old dog's bone. My granny shows me how to clean the mysterious coin by soaking it in brown sauce, and to my delight, a gleaming brass polygon reveals itself with the effigy of King George VI. I take all of these objects to school for show and tell day. Much later, fast forward to 2004, whilst I was researching historians' lives for my PhD, I discovered that the television historian Simon Sharma had a similar experience when he was growing up. He burrowed into an old bomb shelter in London Park. Like me, he received his call early. This experience really drew him into history. The man who had spent his life as a history professor discovered an empty cigarette pack with an exotic name, a dirty sock, a 9 of diamonds playing card, and a bottle that once contained the British soda pop named Tizer. From these objects, he created a miniature traveling museum, which he showed to his schoolmates. So now I'm going to move on to history at Oxford. And it was an unusual time, 1979. I was admitted to study history as one of a very small group of women that year. The Labour government had been under great pressure to include more people from less privileged backgrounds, and believe it or not, most of the college did not have women. So this was a very unusual time. And I really struggled there, partly because all of my professors were male and from a totally different class from me, partly because the students at that time were from a completely different class to me, and partly because I felt, very isolated as a female. So the kind of history that I learned there was very rational, very linear, I would say disembodied, not including the personal at all. No references to personal experiences. And if you were to do that, it would be considered unprofessional. So I've drawn up here a chart of how I see history divided. So on the masculine side, we've got very rational history, whereas the feminine embodies the irrational, and I'd say the unconscious. In the masculine version, there's absolutely no reference to personal experience, and that references to personal experience, as I said, would be considered unprofessional. On the other hand, on the feminine side, it's really considered very important to include irrational elements and subjective elements. So the masculine side, again, involves very considered professional objective history, and it's governed by the god Kronos. And so it's along with chronological time. I think Kronos is related to Saturn, very heavy, linear, fact-based, logical. Whereas I see the feminine type as governed by a very different kind of time. That's Kairos time, which is sort of timeless, really. And if you experience this, it's really incredible. You enter into the portals of the past through dreams, visions, and trance states, which I'll be talking about. So at Oxford, the dominance of the masculine was further enhanced, as I said, by the fact that I was only one of 19 women during my first year at Oxford. All of my professors were male, and as an 18-year-old female, I found my professors daunting and powerful and frankly quite scary. And I think that I became very shy and very lacking in confidence as a result of this, lacking in confidence in anybody that would sort of back me up in my views of history. Then after leaving Oxford, I became fascinated by French history. I'd actually been fascinated by French history at Oxford, but because I couldn't really speak French or read French fluently enough, I wasn't allowed to do it. So after leaving Oxford, I really kind of embraced French history. It was a passionate interest of mine. And two events really led me on a quest to discover the archetypal feminine at work in history. The first one was at the Palace of Versailles. And there we are, in the gardens of Versailles. I was walking through these gardens when I felt time slow down. This is a feature of Kairos time. I felt as if I was encircled in a mist. And as I looked at the grass and the trees, I experienced deja vu. It was as if a portal had opened up, and I just knew that I'd been there before. I actually discovered when I was researching for my book that there was a story. It's a very obscure book, but there was a story of one of the 19th century professors, female professors at one of the female colleges. I think it was Lady Margaret Hall, who wrote a book about this too, and she had exactly the same experience, but back in 19th, early 20th century. Exactly the same experience walking in the gardens. The second experience, which is a lot longer, as I want to describe, this is a photograph of the Conciergerie prison in Paris on the banks of the Seine. It was where the prisoners were taken, lots and lots of them, including Marie Antoinette, before they were executed. And I was very drawn to visit this building. So before I visited Paris, I treated myself to a copy of Christopher Hibbert's History of the French Revolution. I eagerly read about the tyrant Robespierre's last days and the end of the Reign of Terror. The tension builds in Hibbert's narrative until the tyrant makes a futile, last-minute appeal for support, which is interrupted when he is shot through the jaw. The pen was in his hand, and he was asking help in a letter to his supporters. And in one of the most dramatic moments in history, Robespierre only had time to write the first two letters of his name, R-O, before the bullet hit. And there the writing stops, and there's a trailing pen line, and drops of the dictator's blood mark the bottom of the document. The Conciergerie prison stands in brooding fortitude on the banks of the River Seine in Paris. The building is now a museum, and the story about Robespierre drew me to the Conciergerie like a magnet. It was when I finally read Robespierre's last letter in a glass cabinet in the museum that once again I felt time slow down, as if I was sinking into a chasm. I was alone in the museum. There were no other tourists. My boyfriend had already fled the building. Later, he told me he saw ghosts, soldiers in blue and red coats. His departure did not deter me from my desire to read the letter. It was at the exact moment that I got to the bloody RO of the signature that I noticed there was bright red blood on my hands. For a moment, I was stunned, and the synchronicity of the real blood on my hands and the dried blood on the letter held me in awe. Where was the blood coming from? I thought frantically. Why did I have blood on my hands? Then I realized my nose was bleeding, very bizarre since I'd never experienced a nosebleed before. Jung's colleague William James would view this as a mystical religious experience, a vision which carries the soul beyond the limits of history. The experience is hard to describe in words. I think James would talk about it as ineffable. It's a deeply moving feeling of awe that marks it, together with reverence for all that has gone before. Jung would describe this experience as experience of the numinosum, the mystery and unique essence of religious experience, which is independent of the subject's will. Holy terror, awe, dread, and a feeling of mystery, amongst other things, characterize numerous experiences. When I saw the blood, for a moment, time stood still. I did not understand where the blood was coming from. For that second, I was paralyzed by terror and awe. I realized I had stepped out of the familiar realm and into Kairos time, and I was in contact with something wholly other. I had the feeling that somehow I was in contact with my destiny. Something in my personal history was drawing me to France like a magnet. It was taking me out of my personal story of disappointment at Oxford and into the larger archetype of wholeness, which Jung calls the self. I was moving away from my bruised ego and into a different, deeper level of reality. The event carried the seeds of my future development, which would enable me to understand history in a different way. So many years later, I attended, there's Robespierre, Architect of the Terror. I attended Pacifica Graduate Institute in California, as you heard. And this book particularly called to me and made me want to study under the post-Jungian James Hillman, founder of archetypal psychology. This book, if you haven't read it, it's an old book now, published in 1996. It's amazing. It's really, really it's the most readable of all of his books. And he talks about this call to, it doesn't use the term from Campbell, call to adventure, but he talks about how each one of us is called by events or by our family circumstances into our destiny. He also talks a lot about education, and my current research is focusing on applying his theories into education. So Hillman's discovery of this book, which seemed to magically fall off a shelf to me in now Waterstones and Goodge Street, it spoke directly to calling, and it led me to study with him, as I said, at Pacifica Graduate Institute. Here, for the first time, I was encouraged to explore the archetypal feminine at work in history. I discovered here that Carl Jung had experiences which echoed my own when he visited a Byzantine church in Ravenna in Italy. He visited mosaics of the Roman emperor's daughter, Galla Placidia, and she was the person who commissioned the building, a Roman aristocrat. Siren-like, she seemed to call to Jung across the centuries, reaching out when he visited her tomb and looked at the mosaics. While in the church, he experienced a kairos moment when a blue light filled the room. He believed he was seeing history through the eyes of the empress. When Jung returned to Switzerland, he wanted to obtain photographs of these amazing mosaics. To his astonishment, he discovered they did not exist. They had been destroyed by the fire in the Middle Ages. And my reference for all of this is Memory, Dreams, Reflections. Jung saw Galla Placidia as the embodiment of anima, or archetypal feminine image of a woman in a man. Somehow, Jung's fantasy of Galla Placidia reached out to him and placed him in communion with the collective unconscious. History lived in Gala Placidia, and now Jung felt history alive in him. Because of my interest in French history, I researched Richard Cobb for part of my PhD. He's a great historian of the French Revolution, and I searched really through biographies, diaries, letters of historians that I was able to use to piece together experiences which echoed my own. Like me, Richard Cobb, the late Oxford historian, was drawn to France like a magnet. Walking in historical sites like Versailles can bring on a trance-like state where a portal into the past opens. This was certainly the case with Richard Cobb. His obsession was walking the streets of Paris. He walked around the same areas time after time where the Paris poor lived and where he was able to experience the rhythms and seasons of the city. Walking near the laundress, he became fascinated in old items of clothing from the dead. From laundry marks, he was able to discover that one woman who drowned in the Seine wore a man's shirt because people were so poor that they passed on clothing. And he's famous for using these laundry marks to piece together the lives of the Paris poor during the period of the French Revolution. This is a picture of a Jewish quarter in Spain, Girona, Spain, and it was Lucia Graves, the daughter of the mythologist Robert Graves, who also inspired my book. Robert Graves had a dream which really inspired Lucia Graves to visit this part of the world. And it inspired her book, The Memory House. After her father had passed away, she had a dream. And as a result of the dream, she was drawn to visit this part of Girona in Spain. 6 weeks after her father's death, Graves dreamed again of her father, and she dreamt that her father was alive and talking to her. And he spoke so softly that she could only hear sounds, and yet she remembers the words flowed forth like an oracle. When she awoke from the dream, she began to think, for no apparent reason whatsoever, of visiting Girona's old Jewish quarter. And as she walked through the cobbled streets, she remembers she felt a chill and sensed that she was passing through layer upon layer of fingerprints and history. When she touched one of the buildings, she felt its damp, rough stone and entered a trance-like state where she was receptive to the reality of life which took place hundreds of years ago. She felt as though the streets were filled with the ghosts of the Catalan Jews. The experience inspired her to write about those ghosts in her book, Memory House, where she reconstructs the story of the Jews' lives, where they lived there before exile. And she writes from the perspective of a young woman. The third historian I'm going to talk about, though I have a lot more examples of historians in my book, is Simon Sharma, who I mentioned earlier. Here he is. The famous TV historian Simon Sharma also had an experience where he literally felt touched by the past. When he was researching his first major book on the French Revolution, he opened a sealed box containing property of a French soldier. Sharma remembers the moment he opened the box in the Hague archives. Out from the box came a series of poignant tokens of love, a picture ID in silhouette, letters from husband to wife, and most touching of all, a lock of his wife's blonde hair bound in a ribbon. These objects made Sharma feel as if he were being addressed by a voice from beyond the grave. The past lived in the present. The blonde lock of hair had not seen the light of day for 2 centuries and still carried a musky perfume. He felt the immediate and powerful presence of the Dutch soldier beside him. This ghostly communion with the past gave birth to Sharma's first book on the French Revolution, which catapulted him to fame with TV show appearances and international recognition for his work. So I felt really throughout my research for the book that Clio, the muse of history, was calling to me. I was looking for faces of women in history, and at Pacifica, we're very much encouraged to, we have classes in Greek mythology. So in my book, Clio Circle, I argue that all of these experiences which I've talked about can be viewed through the lens of Clio, the Greek muse of history. In Greek myth, Clio was one of 9 daughters born to the goddess of memory. Through her divine powers, it was believed she could inspire the historian. So this picture, actually by Meyer, is the painting that I used for the cover of my book. The artist shows Clio looking out of the window into the future, where her, I think it's a trombone, is announcing history into the future. But at the same time, she's holding the book of history in her left hand, and her face slightly looking back into the past. So she's standing in between the worlds of the past, the present, and the future, waiting to announce and celebrate the heroes from the fanfare which might come from her trumpet. This next depiction of Clio is called the car of history, and it takes, we can see in this image that Clio takes a similar position. Her history book is turned to the past, but she faces the future as she stands on time's winged chariot, a figure of inspiration for historians. So we've come to the end of my talk now, and in conclusion, I argue that Clio is the feminine face of an archetype long ignored. She understands the meaning of history and carries it into the future. Her feminine inspiration through dreams, visions, and trance states enables historians to travel to the past and to feel and touch the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for this wonderful presentation and for sharing those enchanting moments of your childhood with us. So it's amazing how you made us think, or me at least, that I think children are perhaps the best historians without studying history, but maybe they can sense the energy, the vibes. They're more inviting to the images of the past and more interactive with them. So what do you think about that? I mean, would you agree to a certain extent?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think when you're a child, before you've been schooled, you've got this natural fascination that I talked about for the past. I mean, so many children love to dig in the garden, they love to dig in the sand. You discover things from the past when you're doing that. And sadly, history becomes, in high school at any rate, one of the least valued subjects. It's not scientific, it's not like the STEM school education, which is valued. But beyond that, it's really sad, I think, that the textbooks that we use are very disembodied. You've got this voice we don't know where it's coming from, which is describing history essentially in this very linear masculine fashion. We don't know where these voices are coming from. Occasionally you might get a little box saying voice from the past, and you can look at that. But unfortunately, I think it really turns students off, especially if you ask them later, well, what can you remember about history? And they'll say, oh, I was bored. I couldn't learn all those dates and times. And sadly, that takes us away from that childlike imagining. And imagination really is so important to historians. You've got to be able to step into the past to recreate events. I'm sure that there are a lot more historians that have had these experiences that just feel like they can't write about them because it's just considered unprofessional or outside of the profession altogether.
So do you feel that if we integrate more arts-based approaches into the education field, especially when studying history, maybe students, no matter what the age, can engage with, for example, active imagination, sand play, other types of activities when interacting with images? Do you feel that there is, there's a chance, there's some room for this? Perhaps with a revamping of the education system.
I had to make room because I believe it's so passionate, but it's hard to make room because you're driven by this curriculum that you've got to cover, and you're all the time hoping that you can keep up with everything. So things that I did would be essentially reenactments of the past. I'd have my students take the different roles of periods of history, take the roles of different people in the past. For example, I remember one thing that they loved was from the Indus River Valley civilization, one of the earliest civilizations, and we pieced together the little pieces of evidence from the past, like there's a stone there with a god. It's probably Shiva, but it's pre-Shiva, so it's an early representation, we think, in the yogic position, but he's got ram's horns and he's meditating as if he's in the past. And there are other parts, other pieces of evidence which we've got a head of a priest king who's got a band with his third eye there. So I'll have the students stand as statues like this, and then we'll have the most extrovert of them be the historian who's describing what's going on. So I love doing that. And I can see that my Kabbalah teacher's here tonight. So I'm going to mention what she does. She drums and tells stories, and that rhythm of the drumming and the storytelling really opens you up to be receptive to the past. And I'm not a drummer, so I'm very grateful when she comes into school. But telling myths, particularly, and having students reenact part of the myths as well, because I was lucky enough to be teaching ancient history, so I could bring in the Greek myths. And later on in my world religions class, I could bring in Aztec myths and myths of the Native Americans. So I would fit it in whenever I could, but it was hard to fit in. So I think there is a big call, for more arts-based approaches in history.
That's amazing. Where were you when I was in high school? So would have been a different experience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions now. So feel free to use the hand button so that we can see you. And if you want to type the question in the chat box, and then we can just catch it from there and call on you. Again, so whatever you prefer. So would anyone like to go first? Anybody raising their hands, virtual or real hand, that we can see? Lorna.
Yes, it's not a question really. It's just the way that you were discussing teaching reminded me of the way that I used to teach way back when, and was told by a number of colleagues, couldn't you just teach normally, please, Lorna? And so what I would do is I was teaching architecture. And I would put a lot of plans of, say, gardens on the wall, a group here, and a group of, say, plans of cathedrals here, urban plans, etc., little groupings. Then I would ask the students in groups of 2 or 3 to just go there to each, to a group and discuss together for about 10 minutes or so what they were reading in the images. There were images and plans and and drawings, and then we'd go around the room and they would tell us what they'd seen, and they got it every single time. They knew exactly what they were saying, and these were first-year architecture students, so they hadn't been schooled for ages in plans and things like that, but the different things that were being emitted from the drawings and from the images were coming through non-verbally, and then they could so it was a really lovely, sort of way of them perceiving and then sharing and verbalizing, articulating what they were seeing. So it just reminded that what you were saying just reminded me of that.
Thank you, Lorna. It reminds me of an early lesson I used to do with Sutton Hoo burial treasures from Anglo-Saxon times, and I used to have pictures on my wall, and it would be like a little miniature museum in my classroom, and I just have the students try to reconstruct from the images what they thought had happened and who they thought this was. And similar type thing. It really brings the past alive. Yeah.
It's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And I can see Michelle's hand up, and then Marie. So start with Michelle. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Ruth. I want to start with an appreciation, especially for what you said about the masculine versus the feminine perspectives on history. That's, I think, incredibly valuable, incredibly resonant for me right now. I'm a PhD candidate at CIES. I'm currently in Northern Italy doing ancestral healing research for my dissertation and working with the sort of understandings and experiences that you're talking about. It's almost like embarrassing the richness of synchronicities and gifts that come as I'm seeking like the voices of the women and of the pre-Christian and pre-Roman people whose voices were excluded. So I guess my question, and you obviously already just spoke to this to some extent, but to bear down on it again is, I think, if history traditionally in the academy has been written by the victors, and the voices that we are missing are precisely the ones that offer perspectives that are needed now for what's going on in the world and that are most considered unprofessional or any of those things. How just anything else you want to say about any successes you've had in bringing that into, quote, professional historical settings or inspiration or guidance or anything around that?
Well, I'll go back to my teaching. I mean, that's the main area where I've been able to put all my ideas into practice. So I don't know if this is quite answering your question, but I found a lot of images of Clio, and I'd have the students write about really from looking at those pictures and those images, imagining they were Clio and imagining how they might look at the past slightly differently, having looked at those feminine images. There's a historian in my book, Howard Zinn, who wrote history, I think, from a much different perspective. He tried to write, for example, about the Thanksgiving from the point of view of the Native Americans. And he tries, that's the example I remember. And I included him in my book because he was one of those brave people who did talk about why he was drawn to the work and why he wanted to see things from the perspective of the underdog that you're talking about. And he, I think, it was either a vision or a dream that drew him to the work. So I was always interested in the callings of people that write this type of history, like what it was that made them brave enough to, because it was very brave during Zinn's times to do that. We're going back quite a while now. And I think nowadays we're far more receptive to the more feminine type of history. I think I would say from certainly at Pacifica, we were very much encouraged to think it was a requirement that we would actually say in the first part of our dissertation what had called us to the work. So another thing that I discovered was that in the United States, there was a stronger feminist movement when I came here. They were my first female professors that were at Pacifica, even for my master's, which I studied for in London in 1998. I still had no female professors. And the one professor that I did have was for my teaching back in 1985. She very much encouraged me to look at history from different point of view, and particularly she was very keen on looking at feminine perspectives. And in contrast to that, my professor at Oxford had written a history of the suffragette movement, but he basically tried to argue that, I mean, this is incredible. I still find it incredible. He basically tried to argue that the reason why the suffragettes were not successful was because they were being too violent. And I can remember sitting in his room and saying, what other choice did they have? But you must understand, I remember him saying this, you must understand that they were damaging private property, which is against democracy. So it was very, very hard to sort of, when I was there, argue against it. But I think nowadays people are far more receptive. I certainly found a lot more feminine historians, female historians who were arguing things from a very different perspective. I hope that answers
Thank
your
you,
question.
Ruth.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's helpful. I actually used a people's history years and years and years and years ago when I was homeschooling my daughter. So I will have to revisit him. And thanks for all of that.
Thank you. And thanks, Michelle, for sharing this with us as well. You always have some fantastic questions that also get us all thinking. Thank you. And next we have Marie, and I also see Terry's hand up. So Marie and then Terry, and then Glenda. I see Glenda's hand now.
So thank you very much for a very interesting talk, Ruth. That there was lots that I really resonated with, because I was born also into post-war environment in Sheffield, and there was a bomb crater in the bottom of the yard, and there was I used to explore the cellars that were linked together for people to escape the bombings, and also I grew up next to a boarding house in which lived many men who were suffering from PTSD and who were alcoholics and so forth. And so I felt very immersed in that environment, and in fact, was kind of became quite submerged, if you like, in that psychic material. And I think that's why eventually I became an analyst, because of that experience. But I've often thought that war in particular, because in extremis, we're close to the numinous states, and the psychic energy is very powerful, that it imprints things very strongly. And when I've heard people talk about these things, it's often in relation to suffering and war. And I wonder what you thought about that.
It's a really interesting point. I know that he's my hero, James Hillman, believed the same thing as you did. And he made a film, which is really hard to get, but he made a film of him walking the battlefields of the Civil War, where he really felt very much in touch with the soil. And he talked about the blood sacrifice that had taken there on the soil. I've also got in my book example of Robert J. Lifton, who's a psychohistorian who studied the Holocaust. His book's called The Nazi Doctors, and it's really about looking at those doctors who, like Mengele, who were basically using the Jews for experiments. And he was terrified before he sort of got on this mission of writing the book, which is a huge book. And he had this dream where he was guided into the material, and it was almost like an experience that I'd had. So it's going to what you talked about in extremis, events in war. And it was, for me, it was as if, and I think for him as well, that the voices of the Jews who'd been murdered were speaking back from the past, saying, tell our story to people. So yeah, I certainly agree with you that the extremes of war seem to create this imprint on the ground from where the battles took place. I think I've got another example of, it's Arnold Toynbee, who walked on battlefields from ancient Greece, where big battles had taken place, who had a vision while he was walking there. So I think there's definitely something very important about walking on the soil and being in contact with the soil where these big battles took place. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you, Ruth. We will now hand it over to Terry. Hello, Terry.
You're muted.
Still muted. Still muted.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I loved hearing about your early experiences and growing up in such a historical place. It's just very interesting to hear how it touched you and influenced you so much. And my question to you is, when you were teaching and you would have students act out a specific example in history, did you find that the boys were more able to tap into their feminine side at that point and use their imaginations to feel and see and hear what the experience would have been like?
Absolutely, and something I never thought about, but yeah, the boys were just as into it as the girls. Absolutely. I mean, I can remember I've got pictures really from different events that they acted out, and yeah, absolutely, the boys were totally into it. I think there's something about using your imagination, going into the past, and then having the freedom to create your own script based on the documents that you've studied, that really fired the imagination of both the boys and the girls. So thanks for your question. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Thank you, Terry. And yes, I've actually had a similar experience back when I taught in school a long, long time ago. I did also notice that both the boys and the girls behaved the same way when I asked them, for example, to rewrite the story of Hercules as a modern day person, or rewrite Sleeping Beauty or Snow White or any of the other legends and myths and fairy tales. So, this whole process of engaging with images of today, juxtaposing them with the past, superimposing them on the present. Yeah, I mean, playing around with history is just amazing how it hits both genders of children. So, yeah, I never really thought about it either, but now that you mention it, Terry, yes, absolutely. So, thank you for that. And Glenda. Hello, Glenda.
Mute, hang on. Hi. Thanks for the opportunity. I've often felt in trying to contact figures in the past that there are definitely figures in the past who try to contact us to have their story told. When I was writing my first full-length play about Ariadne, Theseus, and the Minotaur, very much the way Ruth is approaching her work, I was trying to understand the story from the point of view of Ariadne. What happened to her? Theseus was a side character. She was the central character in the story. And at one point, about halfway through the play, I completely gave up and I said, I can't do this. Whatever made me think I could write a full-length play about this? And I'd done lots of research, but it was never enough. And maybe Ovid had done more than I'd done, and all this. And I accidentally kicked over a stack of books beside my desk. The books fell over. Out of one of the books fell a piece of paper with a saying on it. And the saying was, start the web and the gods will send threads. And I was so amazed by that. And I was even more amazed by the fact that it was my handwriting and I didn't remember ever writing it down. So one thing I've been doing lately, I studied with Paul Rabelais. He's a Gestalt practitioner from California who did a lot of work in Europe. And a couple of practices I got from him, I've been using in workshops in Ireland. I'll just say briefly what they are because they're similar. Embodiment exercises where you physically take on every aspect that you know of the character, their physical way they carry themselves, the way they walk, how they hold their body, how they hold their head. And then you walk around and you dialogue with other people as the character. And of course, then you let it all go after. So that works quite well for writers, I've found. And the other one I do, and I did this by doing it myself with characters from the Toyne, in the workshops I did with Paul, a dialogue with an historical character. And to dialogue with that character, you set up two chairs. You sit in one. You visualize the character fully as much as you can visualize them. You sense that they're there. You can speak to that character, ask questions, and then when you ask a question, you change seats, and you are now the character answering yourself as the historian. So that's, to me, like two processes that are very connected to what Ruth is doing. And I definitely feel that there have been characters in the past who sought me out to write about them. And I love that connection. That's all I want to say.
Thank you so much, because it reminds me, your experience with the piece of paper falling out of the book reminds me of a lot of writers' experiences that I've got in Clio's circle, actually. There's something magical about being in a library or in a bookstore, and the right book comes at the right time. It's an amazing synchronicity. Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, he was searching for that model in a library in Carmel in California, and he was running his fingers along the shelves, and all of a sudden this book fell out by German historian called Oswald Spengler, which had this giant view of world history, which inspired him to be brave enough to go from all look at history in a much wider context, and it kind of helped him piece together his hero's journey. And I've got, so there's something remarkable that happens when you start your process of research and writing. You seem to have these synchronicities happen to sort of confirm that you're on the right path.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Glenda. Renee, your hand was up. I still see the button.
Hi there, good to see you. This is just a little contribution, not so much a question, but I just love the way you were talking about how important it is for children and adults to explore characters by active imagination and sort of getting more into what those characters felt and did. My youngest son had great trouble learning certain texts for Romeo and Juliet, GCSE level. And he's someone that's very much an active person and social. And a couple of sort of synchronicity type things took place in that a friend of mine who's a wonderful sewer had made some costumes that were from the period of time that Romeo and Juliet took place, the Tudor sort of costumes, Italian Tudor time, and asked if I knew of anyone who would like one of these costumes, and I got one for each of the boys to sort of practice their play. My oldest son doing another Tudor play, and there was a conference happening in Verona that my husband was going to, fortunately. So I said, bizarrely, we just need to go and see Juliet's balcony and let the guys have a sword fight in the courtyard. And they did, and bizarrely, they were wearing these costumes, and I thought they'd probably be completely horrified, but bizarrely, they were using all the quotes. Do you bite my thumb? Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? And a plague on both your houses, and it was fantastic. And my youngest son did really well. He got an A for his his exam. So it was just one of those moments that all sort of came together and resonated, the importance in education, I think, for play and really getting into, the character that you were exploring.
Yeah, I have the students are very, very creative in making their own costumes, their own masks. They'll bring in all sorts of things that I'm totally amazed where they find. And I think, I think that was a wonderful experience for you and for your boys. They'll never forget it.
Oh, it was for me too. So, yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Yes, and again, it's that thing about space and embodiment and interaction with the vibes of the place and time and history. And I mean, what better way to have a child actually experience it than actually go there and have this, personal interaction with it. So thank you for sharing this with us, Renee. I see Ray's hand is up. Hello, Ray.
Hello, Ruth. Thank you for a very stimulating talk. Excuse me. I like to go back to Marie's comment a little bit. What stood out to me early in the talk was how you were examining these objects, and by examining the object, contact with the object, like the mask, would break through the present moment through a portal into the past. And you used the phrase "time stood still." It made me, I recently read Tolstoy's War and Peace, and which is, some would say, the greatest novel of all time, but certainly a historical novel. I see it more as a religious and spiritual novel, even than a historical novel. But what happens there is, excuse me, in the midst of the most intense historical battle, one of the characters gets knocked off his horse by an explosion of a cannonball, and he's lying there wounded, and he's looking up into the sky, and he goes into a trance-like state where he's just looking at the clouds, and he has that experience of time stood still. And so it's almost as if you were talking about how the present can be a portal into the past, but Marie's comment made me think that there can be a portal from the historical into the transcendent, and that in the midst of this most historical moment where you're facing battle and facing imminent death also brings you through that historical to the infinite and transcendent. And then to try to make a parallel to the incredible painting by Vermeer, I happen to have a book right in front of me of Vermeer's painting, so I'm looking at the painting. I think we could spend an hour on that painting alone. But what's so interesting in Vermeer's paintings, there's usually a window going at, they're interior paintings, but there's a window going outside. And this painting, which is, by the way, is called The Art of Painting, you can't see the window, but you can see the light coming in from the window onto the face of Chloe. And the curtain is kind of pulled over that. And you, the reader, the watcher, the looker at the painting, the spectator is looking at the painter doing his job. He's looking at the muse. She's seeing what's going on outside, and she's turning back and trying to give you that. And what's behind on the wall is the way we usually think of history, in 2 dimensions and a map of battles and what happens. But up in the corner of that painting, there is a little painting that attempts to show some kind of a picture of something happening historically. I say this because in undergraduate, I took a class called Writing History, and we actually had to pick a historical event and fictionalize it. And so all these things came together in your talk. And the last thing I just wanted to say is the importance of museums, in the sense that they have these objects that we can go and see and act as a portal into the past as well. So a lot of different reactions to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you. And also I think of the phrase museum, and I sort of think muse, the prefix muse, museum, and it's this musing activity that kind of calms you down, and you're in this quiet, silence, reverent atmosphere of the museum, and you've got this chance, therefore, to enter a sort of different meditative space. And thank you for reminding me about the map in the background. I couldn't have forgotten all about that. Yeah.
Like I said, I think I could spend an hour talking about that painting.
Thank you so much, Ray. And we look forward to your poems in a few minutes, actually. So Ray is also a wonderful poet. I want to thank you, Ruth, so much for this amazing talk. It's been very inspiring and got us thinking about history, and it kind of did rewind us into the past a bit. So thank you so much for your insights, for sharing your experiences, and we would definitely love to see you with us again. I'm going to put the link of your book here in the chat box. So if anyone would like to pick a copy.
I have a quick response to Michelle, who was asking me for a source.
Oh, sorry.
James Hillman. It's okay. I saw that in the chat. I don't know if you can get hold of the film. Certainly Google it, James Hillman. And I think the book that he talks about this experience in is The Terrible Love of War.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. I looked it up and that was my guess. So thanks for the confirmation.
Great.
Thank you. And before we move on to our next section, which is the creative showcasing. So we have we have Hedy, and we have Ray, who have signed up to read poems. If anyone else would like to give it a shot and either share your paintings or any other form of art or poetry, then please feel free, just let me know, send me a little note in the chat box, and we will reserve a place for you. Before we move on, we're going to be having a 5-minute break, so just you could go take a little stretch, fill up your cup of tea, and then come back refreshed. But there are some activities that are coming up soon, and I would like to tell you about them. Many of them revolve around so much of what Ruth was talking about today. So first up, we have Patricia, the session with Patricia Levy, who, of course, many of you know because of her book on the Handbook of Arts-Based Research and so many other books on arts-based research. So Patricia will be giving an author chat, and this is on the 6th of February. And then on the 7th and 8th, we have a wonderful online conference on fiction versus nonfiction and how both of them feed into each other. So there will be a lot of presentations on history, fictionalized history, or using history to write fiction, fact becoming fiction, fiction becoming fact, and so on and so forth. We do have a wonderful collection of plenary speakers. One of them is with us here today. Hello, Sarah. So we have Sarah Smith, a New York Times bestselling author, as well as Carol Puleo. Hello, Sarah. We see you now. Tina de Bellegarde and Lita Sedaris. So they will be giving some talks as well about their experiences with writing fiction through nonfiction. So there will be some mystery writing, history writing, and a little bit of both. Then we have a course actually by the 4 wonderful mystery makers. It's going to be a 1-month online course by Carol, Lita, and Tina. It's going to be about writing mystery fiction. So this course will run from the 7th of February until, I believe, the 7th of March or something like that. You can look it up. It's there on the website. And we have a conference, although our call for papers is now, it stopped a couple of days ago, but we could make an exception for this group. There's so much that resonates with today, so much of what Ruth spoke about. So when you spoke about the Blitz, for example, Ruth, and how you saw that in the present, again, this is modernism being remodeled through the imaginal, through our own sensory and non-sensory experiences and traveling back to it and seeing it again in a fresh new lens. So the conference Modernism Remodeled is all about that. It's about seeing what happened to modernism. Is it actually still there? Did it finish? Are we still living in an interwar period? And I think we can all agree on that one way or the other. So how to express this artistically and creatively? Of course, academic and scholarly papers are also welcome. But since the call for papers is already done, if you do think that you might like to present something in that conference, please fill out the form, but leave a note at the bottom saying that you were here at Psychreative and you were invited to send your proposal, although the deadline has finished. So this conference will be at Cambridge University on the 24th and 25th of February, but we also have online participation available for those who cannot make it in person. And then we have our Women Who Create conference, which is also in Cambridge University, but that would be on the 23rd and 24th of March. And this is all about women throughout history, women today, and all the creative and wonderful things that they have done for the world and how they may have changed, influenced, or impacted the world in and through their creativity. And what do we have? Yes, we do have a course, a full course run by Patricia Levy, also all through March, about using personal stories and using them in order to write fiction. So then again, historical fiction here would make a lot of sense. So if you're interested in writing historical fiction, if you're interested in archives, in passing down the stories of other people who you have a feeling, they may have contacted you and wanted you to carry on with their stories and tell the world a bit about them and about their world. So maybe this course is for you as well. And we have an event for World Poetry Day. This one hasn't been uploaded on our website yet, but it should be by Monday at the latest. And it's by Sandra Faulkner. Many of you who know Sandra Faulkner also know how famous she is in the world of art-based research, especially poetic inquiry. And she will be, the workshop will be about writing poems from other people's stories, from family stories. So ancestors, family members, anyone that you may be closely related to, or that, you may have heard so much about, but never really met. How would you change their stories into poetry? This will be on the 21st of March. It will have also both a live and an online format. So live, it'll be in London, in Richmond, at a lovely bookstore called Books on the Rise. And we will also be doing some live streaming for those of you who would like to join us online. Other things that we still haven't yet announced coming up soon, we have an astrology conference, and this is going to be an online conference about astrology and arts-based research, astrology and the arts in general. This would be on the 8th and 9th of April online. And then we have at Birkbeck University and online as well, a conference on Renaissance resonances. So the Renaissance today. We had one about modernism today. Now we have one about Renaissance art and today. And in May, we have two conferences. We have one on ekphrasis and sacred art, also at Birkbeck. And this would be around the 10th and 11th of May. Online also available. And on the 27th of May, we are heading off to Edinburgh to the Scottish Storytelling Centre, and we have a conference on the art of storytelling and the archetypes in focus. Our guest speaker will be Dr. Catriona Miller, who will be talking about vampires in fiction and in digital storytelling. And yes, Susan Rowland will be giving a lovely session also mid-May. This is also a free event. It's online. And it'll be sort of like a reunion for the Jungian Arts-Based Research Group and anyone who has taken Jungian Arts-Based Research courses with us. But it is also a lovely chance for anyone who would like to join and have a chat with Susan about how she uses arts-based research in order to write stories, in order to write her fiction novels, and in order to, her fiction novels serve many different purposes: ecofeminism, autoethnography, and history, and so much more. Yeah, so that's it for now. There will be more. Hopefully by Monday, you will be able to see everything. But if you would like to join us, just let us know. And if you have any questions about anything that I've mentioned today, please feel free to drop us a line. I'm going to leave you alone for 5 minutes, take a break, and come back. And then we will start with Ray, and then Hedy, and then brace yourselves to be called upon if you express any interest in reading something or presenting any lovely creative visuals that you have come up with. So see you in 5. Thank you so much, Ruth, again, for this wonderful, wonderful talk.
Oh, really quickly, Dr. Meyer, it's Caitlin from Harker, and I just wanted to say, thank you. It's been so long since I've seen you, and being a student of yours had a huge impact on me. I still remember our conversations about dreams and creativity, and it pushed me to be an artist today. And I still keep a dream journal, and I would say that our conversations about dreams, I still keep them in mind, and my dreams have had a significant impact on my waking life as well. And you basically changed my life. So thank you. It's really nice to see you again.
Just lovely to see you. That was such a surprise.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook, so I had to join. I had the day off, so.
Great, and good luck with your art. I always believed in your art. I'm so glad that you embraced your destiny to be an artist. I could see it in you when you took my classes. So it's just lovely to see you. Good luck.
Thank you. I just finished working on the Smurfs at Paramount. So in 2025, if you want to see the Smurfs, I worked on the art for that.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
really nice
amazing.
seeing
Thank you,
again.
Caitlin, for coming here. And if you would like to share your art in the next part of the session, that would be wonderful. So think about it. We would love to see your work.
Thank you.
I'm surprised they let me in because it started 1 hour ago. It's so complicated with this program because they have a team that they are doing stuff for they make it. They go to the defend why it's not like that. So you're already really interesting. The team, the property, they're going to do the release. I'm not finding it. It's very hard. I'm okay. I just I know that I'm on the second one. Because back then that one, but that was about somebody else, not Mexican. Was in the Facebook, or another picture. He's coming from who? Yes. Maybe nice, I know. What time does people come to a club? Okay.
Okay. Welcome back, as you all come back. Okay, so is there anyone other than Ray and Hedy who would like to share something with us today? Nicolette, hello. Okay, wonderful. And Glenda. All right, great. So I have your names down. Hey, the timer's telling us that our 5 minutes are over. So Nicolette and Glenda.
There's some
Okay,
names in the
perfect.
chat. Their names in the chat as well, I think.
Oh, okay, didn't look at the chat yet. Sorry. For some reason, because the timer here took all the space, so I can't see the chat box anymore. Right. Okay. Oh, and Marie. Wonderful. Of course. I love your poems, Marie. Okay. Oh, Caitlin needs to go. All right. Hopefully next time. Anybody else? That's it. Okay, so welcome back. And this is the second part of our Psychreative session. Those of you who are here with us, you know that usually during this session, we have Sarah who will be taking care of everyone and calling on everybody. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today. It's a very busy day for her. So hello, Sarah, if you ever watch the recording. We miss you and we hope to see you with us again next time. And so we will start now with Ray. Ray, are you ready?
Sure. How much
All right.
time? How much time? I
5.
had two poems and two poems and then a short poem. Is that
Yeah, there should be around 5 minutes. Yeah, that's fine.
okay? I'm gonna.
All right.
I may try to do an experiment on the last poem, where I try to play some music in the background. So we'll see how that works out. I'm not sure it'll work.
All right. We can try.
So the first poem is called the title is actually a couplet. The snow is falling while you sleep. The snow is falling when you wake. Each of us comes from somewhere else. No star is a cosmic center. Your life is not about success. Healing is about making whole. Did you think pleasure was central? Did you aspire for only wealth? Did you believe in just one God? Have you never fallen in love? You cannot live inside a box. Apartments are only for rent. There are no farms in the city, no place for animals to thrive. You did not long to become poor, so why starve yourself of all art? Why deny the breath of spirit? Why cut down forests for profit? Once, as a child, you just watched the snow falling from the gray sky into the arms of the white pine for hours and hours and hours and hours. Everything comes from elsewhere. The snow from the clouds and the sky, the rain from vast seas and rivers, winged seeds from underground roots. If you wish to become a whole, you must include everything. Each snowflake is a messenger. Here always arrives from elsewhere. The snow is falling while you sleep. The snow is falling when you wake. The second poem is a short one. The sound of the waves on the beach. A shell on a beach is a tale full of fury, moist sand, and sound, signifying everything, unseen, unheard, lost, yet now found. And the last one, I don't know whether this is going to work. So we'll have to do a quick test to tell me if you can hear the music. I have to pull the headphones off. Can you hear the music?
I can't. No.
No?
Heard a little beep.
Okay. I wish I could figure out how to do this. All right, you can
Maybe need to, did you unplug the earphones?
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah, that's strange.
We'll,
Hmm.
we'll figure it. We'll figure it out eventually.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to read the last poem without the music. A secret immortality. What's known is all around us here. No need for us to ask a seer. Just open up to all you hear. Pay close attention and revere. What's unknown waits upon that shore. We only find when we seek more. Let fascination be your oar, and truth be what you're living for. There's much that you will never know, from whence you came or where you go, why crickets chirp or fireflies glow, how gravity makes rivers flow. Yet deep within you have a clue why you are here, what you must do. So close your eyes and find a view. The secret's never far from you. The angels and the gods are near. They come and go, just like the deer. Yet they will only reappear when you have overcome your fear. This life arrives and sets its pace, then disappears without a trace. Existence is a gift of grace from something that transcends this place. Thank you.
So
Beautiful,
beautiful.
beautiful.
So
Really.
beautiful, Ray. Thank you. Thank you. These are gorgeous.
Thank you.
And, there's one of the parts of the first poem that stuck in my mind. No star is a cosmic center. I just love that. And I loved all the ecological resonances in it and how, there's so much diversity in nature, the human and the non-human nature, both. Reminds me of the conversation you and I had a few days ago on Facebook. And I think the world needs more poetry like this, particularly at a time like now. So thank you, Ray.
No,
This is
thank you.
beautiful. Thank you. And Hedy, hello, Hedy. It's lovely to see you again. The wonderful Hedy.
Happy, delighted to be here and to see so many familiar faces. And thank you so much, Ruth, for this amazing and inspiring talk and images. It will resonate in my mind for a long time, and I still keep my little child vision or apprehension of things. So your words will resonate with me for a long time. Thank you. I'm going to be reading two poems. One, I will share screen. Let me see. That is inspired by this painting titled 3 Women and 3 Owls by Juanita Guccione, an American artist who has lived several years in Algeria and then returned to New York. She was from Brooklyn. And her work really is extremely archetypal and inspiring. So the first poem I'm going to read is from my new poetry collection, Or Did You Ever See the Other Side, that was just published in October by Press 53. And
I'm showing mine off here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, feminine themes and feminine cover, and the book is inspired by feminine artists, for the most part, contemporary and surrealists. So the poem I wrote is I'm giving you some time to look at the painting because I'm sure you're amazed by the painting and maybe more so than my poem. So I'll let you some time to absorb the painting. The poem was published by Slant initially, and it is a pantoum. It's titled, Can't You See How We're Weaving Ourselves Tight? Didn't you think you'd soar high up when you wore a miniskirt? I lowered my hemline, surrendering to ghosts, owls, hoots, following the rhythm of my elders' everlasting refrains. When she visited the Louvre, she wanted to wear her skin bare. I lowered my hemline, surrendering to ghosts, owls, hoots, wore a keychain around my wrist that didn't open any doors. When she visited the Louvre, she wanted to wear her skin bare, chest open to the drifts of wind as she'd march with Delacroix's banner. Wore a keychain around my wrist that didn't open any doors, afraid to face the black sun of melancholy, sung by Gérard de Nerval. Chest open to the drifts of wind as she'd march with Delacroix's banner. She enters the triple dance, a sarong loosely wrapped around her hips, afraid to face the black sun of melancholy, sung by Gerard de Nerval. I conjure my younger self steps, eager to unlock the darkness. She enters the triple dance, a sarong loosely wrapped around her hips. The three of us dive into the emerald waters under the blackened sun. I conjure my younger self steps, eager to unlock the darkness. You didn't soar high up, still unable to satisfy your hunger. The three of us dive into the emerald waters under the blackened sun, united at last in our quest for meaning, weaving ourselves tight. And let's see, how do I remove this? Okay, I'll just juxtapose. The next poem is a more recent poem inspired by a photograph of my mother at she was born in Cairo, as I was, and this was the school she attended, Pensionnat de la Mère de Dieu, and my mother is at the very right end in the embroidery class. She was doing lace at the time. So the poem, I'm a bit, the poem should be under the picture.
Oh, we can't see the picture, Hedy. Maybe it's better to unshare and then reshare.
Okay. Yes, because I can't find anything on my screen. I'm glad you told me.
Yeah,
Okay,
it happens. Sometimes just difficult to switch when it's photos.
because I've opened too many windows.
Yeah, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that all the time.
Okay.
I never close a window.
I couldn't because there was something hiding it on top. I'm not that skilled. So let's go back to the Zoom and share again. Sorry, it's taking so much time. Can you see the photo?
No worries. Yes, yes, it's there now.
Okay. So I was saying that this is at the school I attended where my older sister and mother went also to school. And I have to say that this room and the nun didn't change at all when I went to school from those times. Must have been 1930s here. Okay, so here's the poem. What lies behind the stillness of an eternal pause? What strikes me in this black and white photo of my mother's sewing class is the stillness of an eternal pause. The nun in the farthest corner makes sure the movement of the needle is steady and no one breaks the silence. I recognize the premise identical to when I went to school. I see myself restless next to these girls who dare not raise their head from their delicate labor or take a sideways glance. It is as though the person behind the camera were invisible. They are weaving white lace altar linens and albs of different shapes and sizes. My mom and the girls seated next to her work on both ends of a large embroidered linen covering their knees like flowing ripples. Did they dream of wedding dress ruffles as they created these intricate designs? They wouldn't look the sisters in the eye nor reply whenever reprimanded. Wouldn't think of running in hallways as I often did in later years and would get grounded, forced to stay at school after hours. But it was my mom who got punished. She had to take the tramway from Heliopolis to Garden City to pick me up. An entire afternoon wasted. The nuns would often tell us to polish our minds rather than our nails. Once Salwa, the daughter of an officer from the Nasserist era, a beautiful girl with peach-colored skin and green eyes, came to class with leftover makeup. Mère Saint-Agnes held her tightly by the wrist and dragged her to the corridor sink. With the rough cloth used to dry our hands, she rubbed her eyes, saying, "Will you still repeat that makeup won't come off with soap?" The girl's emerald eyes drowned in tears, consolated with defiance. I'm not sure what happened next. Probably the sisters had to make amends. After all, she was a high-ranked officer's daughter. Thank you.
Wow, what a mean nun. I certainly hope the officer did something about it. Thank you so much, Hetty. These are gorgeous poems. And as a matter of fact, the first poem that you read, Can't You See How We're Weaving Ourselves Tight? We actually read it in our in one of our courses, in our poetic inquiry course, the one on working with images. So and it's we love this poem. And thank you so much for your wonderful poetry. And speaking of poems, I forgot to mention that our submissions deadline for Indelible will close on the 31st of this month. So anyone who would like to submit their poetry this week is your last chance. But of course, if it doesn't work, just, let me know and, we'll fix a way. Thank you, Hedy. Next up, Nicolette. Hello, Nicolette.
Hello, good evening. Hi. Okay, I will share a little poem. It's titled Live Your Life in Awe. Live your life in awe. You are enough and loved before all. Live your life in awe. Sometimes it will be rough, sometimes it will be still. To open up gates to follow divine will. Live your life in awe, to follow your call, for the benefit of all, to help us thrive from fear to love. Live your life in awe, just be still. The answers will come from within. Live your life in awe, and don't be scared to follow the call. It won't bring you astray. With love in your heart, you will find your way home. Live your life in awe. You are your own revelation. Be love to conquer it all.
Thank you, Nicolette. That's very beautiful, so positive and inspiring and very musical.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
And next up, Glenda, are you ready?
Unmuting. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was inspired. I decided I'd just read one poem, but I was inspired by Hedy's contribution and also your program in March, turning historical narratives into poetry. I've done some family history research going way, way back, but I wrote a poem called 6 Generations. It's my own family history, although I've changed some of the names for people who are still alive. So this is called 6 Generations. Generation 1, 1860 to 1928. Robert Blanton Moon was a religious man. Can you hear me? When the preacher thundered, it was harder for a rich man to go to heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. He rapidly dispersed most of his money and lands to the poor, to the family's dismay. His daughter Anna, 1901 to 1983, had to work as a Georgia sharecropper. At 16, she married for love, pregnant, and her little boy Harry toddled after her in the fields. She picked cotton in the hot sun until she could no longer bend. Her baby daughter was born with German measles, the dread rubella. The first thing Anna remembered hearing after the birth was the doctor's voice as he swept past her bed. "Don't bother naming that one, it won't live." "I will so name my daughter," Anna said. She called the baby Agnes, Lamb of God. And Agnes lived long, 1921 to 1997, surviving measles and the cholera that took poor little Harry, age 3. Doctors told Agnes, this generation 4, doctors told Agnes she could never bear children. But she had 2 girls. Strapped to a table and left alone, That's how they did it in those days. She went into convulsions. Her first baby was yanked out of her with long forceps. She named her Louise, and Louise lived. Generation 5. Louise's child was more normal in every way until 2 months old, when she regularly stopped breathing, a potential cot death. Louise didn't panic, but held her own breath as she watched Gloria's every breath, day and night, each time her little head lolled over, reviving her each time she began to fade. But Gloria lived and grew strong. If the war comes here, Mommy, we can hide in our house, she said. In time, Gloria had 3 healthy children of her own in Ireland. Coda. Generations of women giving birth have rarely made the newspapers or television. If men gave birth, each birth would be celebrated and they'd be honored as heroes, birth heroes. So every time I hear on the news that men have killed, are killing, I wish they understood the need to help things live. I wish they would remember that each life they casually take, a woman struggled hard to give.
Wow, very beautiful and very interesting. Thank you, Glenda. That's amazing. You do really well with turning family stories into poems. That's incredible. Thanks.
Yes, I'm doing a series of poems about historical figures. Some that I knew, some that I had imagined I knew.
Well, I mean, that's probably one really good key to knowing, imagining that you know, and then eventually you'll know it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see Robert Blanton very well, even though he died in 1928, because of family stories that were passed on about him. Like he cried when his grandson picked his only watermelon that he planted before it was ripe.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was
Oh,
really
thank you for sharing these with us, Glenda. Yeah,
thank
there's
you for the opportunity.
this mystical connection, between your ancestors and the poems that you write about them. And actually, Marie, I mean, moving on to Marie, Marie did something really wonderful in the course that we're working on right now, working with the persona. So when you connected with your grandmother in that poem, it was just so touching and moving, really beautiful. And you do have something for us right now, don't you, Marie?
I just wrote this last night. It's morning here in Australia, and so I haven't really looked at it since I wrote it, and I wrote it fairly quickly. But I'm struck by the kind of the resonance with what we've been talking about today, and it was a poem that was written as part of the course about the sign of Pisces. And it's called The Symbol of the Two Fishes. And I don't know whether you are familiar with this image of two fishes swimming in opposite directions but joined together. So, so this is the poem. There is a tree, a blessed tree, the tree of immortality, and it is found in Tiamat's realm upon the bottom of the sea. For all is her, and she is all, the one and many of the sea, and fishes joined, yet swim opposed, like time and all eternity. And in the space that lies between, imagination is the key. In Pisces steps, the shimmering world dissolves in ambiguity. So, ancient mother, come and claim the fishes swimming unto thee, for Neptune's crown and phallic pose suggests of some discrepancy. There is a tree, a blessed tree, the tree of immortality, and it is found in Tiamat's realm upon the bottom of the sea. The last in sequence of the signs may point us to infinity, and in the jewel fishes found the meaning of this mystery.
Beautiful.
Wow, that is beautiful.
That
That is very melodious, very imagistic, so gorgeous. And we're so lucky to get a sneak peek before Thursday. Wow, thank you, Marie. This has been really wonderful. And thank you all for sharing your poems. And I'm wondering if anyone else right now would like to pitch in. Would anyone else like to share a poem or some other artistic piece? Lorna! Yes, I was hoping. Is this also from the course? No. You're still muted. Still muted? Yeah.
That was really weird.
Yay.
I couldn't find the mute thing. So no, not a poem, but I've got a video. If you're interested. Yeah. It's
Of course.
okay. So I'll do screen share. It's 7 minutes. So here we
Okay.
go. I should say that the sculpture is actually black, but for some reason it comes out gold, which I like. Just to let you know. So tell me if you can hear it. When it
Not yet.
So it has music on it, but you're
Not
not.
yet. Yeah. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe you'll need to stop share and then reshare, but click on the optimize sound.
Okay. Now where do we do optimize? Original sound
Right.
off. I'll put it on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'll
So
see.
when you do the share screen at the bottom, there's share sound.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure you click that before you click on share.
Okay. Share sound.
Should be at the bottom left. So did you click on share screen and then you saw all the different screens in front of you?
Yeah.
So once you do that, once you click on share screen,
Oh, got it now. Great.
yeah, okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
Thank you. Here we go.
Great.
Restart my audio. Let's see. I think it's going to get complicated. To share your computer.
We don't see the screen yet though.
Yeah. It's telling me I have to do something after I have to do something before I can share my. Well, let's see if that works now.
Okay.
Well, there is talking. Let's just try it without music. Let's see if that works.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so. In the Native American tradition, can you hear that? I went on a shamanic journey to meet my animal spirit guides. Winged black horse arrives. Beautiful beast, nuzzling close to my heart. Inviting me to hold on to her mane and join her for a flying journey. Alongside, Black Eagle soars. Her sharp eyes piercing the world with clarity. Her huge wings creating winds of change. Swooping closer now to Mother Earth, a deep dark cave from which life emerges, in the form of a beautiful black panther. Worldly wise, in the depths of his dark earth knowing. I feel deeply honored to have met my teachers. Black Horse, Black Eagle, and Black Panther. Quietly inside, I promise to honor their spirits in form and bring their beings into life on earth. In the ceramic studio, a certain slab of clay was lying on the table, waiting to be claimed, the last of the pack of clay. It kept talking to me, catching my eye, suggesting the torso of a human figure. I was intrigued and began with it as the starting point of the sculpture. Unexpectedly and ironically, a human armature from which to begin? I did not know why or how, but trusted the creative spirit. Somehow, the eagle found its place as the winged shoulders of the torso. The breasts under her wings became windows into the caves. Is this what we humans have done to Mother Earth? The horse transformed from the ancient tree with roots in Mother Earth and became the head of all. Mediating between the two sides, night and day, life and death, dark and light. Black Panther emerges from the earth cave. The tree is the spine of all. Human, horse, panther, and eagle, from which they all grow together from the earth. Rich in black soil, caves and mysteries, all beings one. And here, in the core of the tree, is a world of wise owls. And fledglings waiting for their moment to sing in the dawn chorus of the new Mother Earth. And what is this they all bring together? Here, in the nest of the tree, on the back of the black horse, is the egg in the form of a planet. The beautiful black new Earth. Of gold. Did you hear the flute at
Thank
all?
you so much. Yes, we heard everything very clearly. It's just that at some point, the image stopped moving.
Oh,
But anyway, I mean, but we got to see it all in the very beginning, and you know, the close up, it was actually very stimulating. So we were thinking and imagining as you were speaking in the video. That was wonderful.
that's terrible. At what point did it
That
stop?
was great. Yeah, that was great. It's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lorna. This is beautiful. And I just love all the work that you do and the stories that you attach to them.
Thank you, Rula.
And
They come from
thank you. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like something is materializing through you, through those sculptures that you're doing. They do have that kind of energy. And I believe we can all feel it. At least that's how I can sense it.
That was my
So
daughter.
thank you so much. Thank you. It was a great honor having you all here today, sharing your wonderful work, your creativity, your scholarship, everything. Thank you so much, Ruth, Glenda, Marie, Hedy, Nicolette, Raymond, Lorna, and thank you, Melissa and Elena, for being here. And thank you, everyone who isn't here anymore, but thank you for being here anyway. We do hope to see you again very soon. Our next Psychreative session is with Lorna. And it would be marking 2024 as a leap year because the date for our next Psychreative session is, guess when? The 29th of February. So we will have this up very soon on the website so you can book it. And I don't know if there's such a thing as a leap year party, but our Psychreative session will be sort of a leap year party. Think of it as something that happens once every 4 years. So we've never had a Psychreative session on the 29th of Feb before. This is our very first time, and I believe the next time we cannot be before 4 years from now. So yes, you were all invited to the next Psychreative session with Lorna, and wishing you all a lovely week. And we hope to see you again very soon. Before Lorna, our next meeting would be on the 6th of Feb for Indelible Evenings with Patricia Levy. And then we will keep informing you as we go along. So follow us on social media. And if you sign up to our newsletter, you will be receiving weekly and sometimes more than once a week updates about what's coming up next. So have a great day, everyone, or a great evening. Thank you so much once again, Ruth. This has been absolutely fascinating. And we look forward to more of your work. Right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. It was great. Really enjoyed it. Lorna, is there somewhere else we could see your video?
LornaMcNair.org. I think that's what it is.
Hey.
It is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
All
you
right.
all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.